So actually I wanted to start off with just understanding the sort of overall regulatory landscape. What is actually the current situation here?
I'm starting to get some buttocks needed when I talk about regulation. So the maritime landscape, you can think about it as divided into, we have the IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, which is the UN body for regulating shipping.
Yeah.
And we have the EU, which is in Brussels, obviously.
Yeah.
And the IMO and the EU has been interconnected when it comes to leading maritime decarbonization, but they've also been diverging on some points. So the IMO has been leading maritime decarbonization through the MEPC, which is the Environmental Committee for Shipping. And they meet every few months and they have a strategy for, initially it was cutting emissions from global shipping by 50% by 2050 compared to 2008 as the baseline.
So just understanding, Kristy, is the IMO organized through sort of member states, or is it more the shipping companies that are part of
That's
the
a
IMO?
great question. So the IMO is similar to the UN. You have member states, which are the UN countries. I think it's 152 countries that are members of the UN, and they are part of the IMO. And of course, the IMO invites NGOs and think tanks and regulatory bodies that are voluntary in the market to pitch in and to put in lobbying and advisory papers to the IMO. But the voting member are member states, countries. Yeah. So the IMO had a target to cut emissions by 50% by 2050. But on the other hand, you have the EU, which had the ambition to cut emissions from shipping by 100% by 2050 to be in line with the Paris Agreement. So after multiple years of lobbying and of discussions, the IMO, as of last July, during MEPC 81, have agreed to revise the IMO's initial strategy and align with a steeper decarbonization curve, which is closer to net zero by 2050. So now we are entering a new era for IMO regulation because the IMO is going to have to revise all of its strategy to align with this new curve.
Yeah.
And in parallel, you have the EU, which are doing their own thing, which we're going to talk about as well.
So it sounds like the sort of IMO comes in first with an ambitious target, then the EU comes in and sort of tops that target, and now that creates a spillover effect back into the IMO, and then they become even more ambitious as well.
And this is what we always see when we talk about sustainability and decarbonization regulation. There's always first movers that lead the way, and then we revise the strategy, we become more ambitious, we revise it again. So there's always this back and forth, and this is how we know that regulatory bodies are leading the direction in setting a lighthouse. So at ZeroNorth, we always say that regulations are a lighthouse to put the light out and show the way in terms of where we need to be going, but they lack the practical implementation and practical aspect in terms of how does it translate into daily operations of shipping businesses.
Yeah. Could you then also say that because we have these two sort of separate organs, does that also create some complexities, and how does that relate to sort of the EU focusing on Europe and IMO focusing globally? How do you navigate in that?
Yes, so again, shipping companies are global companies. So if you are a shipping company, you have business in Europe some way or another. So having the IMO and the EU having separate data collection system, having separate monitoring plans, having even different calculation methodologies for the emissions is a hassle for shipping companies. They have to monitor everything twice and two different methodologies. This is why they have solution providers like ZeroNorth that help them navigate these complexities. But again, when you have two regulatory bodies moving at different paces, different perspectives on the implementation of the policy, it is of course added complexity, and it makes decarbonization become a how do you say, like a bureaucratic process, instead of creating excitement in companies to lead with a change management perspective towards new sustainable business model. It becomes, oh, we have to do this reporting for this and we have to do this reporting for that.
So it becomes a lot of hard work, a lot of data gathering and putting it into the right sort of calculation or structure it in the right way, and then sending it to each sort of organ.